2019 got off to a strong start on the jobs front with payrolls higher than expected and a long-lasting recovery that has now added jobs for 100 months consecutively through two presidents. It comes at a moment when there have been questions raised over President Trump's ability to deliver blue-collar manufacturing jobs in high-profile cases where he has personally intervened. John Yang explores both parts of this story.
Judy, let's break down the new data with Neil Irwin, senior economics correspondent for the New York Times, and Danielle Paquette, national labor reporter for the Washington Post. Welcome to you both. Neil, let me start with you. There have been a lot of talk and concern about a recession, the economy going into recession. What does today's jobs report tell us about the state of the economy?
Look, I think those recession fears that we were hearing a lot of last month are out the window for now. This is a strong economy. It's a strong labor market. We've also seen the stock market recover in the last few weeks. This seems like an economy that's on relatively steady footing, despite some of the risks that we've seen. 304,000 jobs added in January, still a low unemployment rate. Things look pretty good.
And Danielle, was there any evidence of the effect of the partial government shutdown in these numbers?
You saw more workers self-identifying as temporarily laid off. That number shot up by about 175,000 as people were sort of forced to figure out, what do I do? I can't go to work. You also saw the number of people working part-time jobs out of economic necessity go up. They're becoming Uber drivers, they're substitute teaching. Some were telling me they might even hold on to those jobs in case the government shuts down again.
People should realize there are two surveys in this. The payroll survey, which determines the jobs number, and the household survey, which does the unemployment rate. And is the uptick in the unemployment rate, Neil, a reflection of furloughed federal workers?
Yeah, it looks that way. People who weren't working reported to the survey takers that they didn't have a job. However, their job still existed. So in the survey of employers, they showed up as that job still existing. But as Danielle said, it's an environment where this was a tough time for government workers. It was a tough time for people who were furloughed. But it did not really distort the overall numbers enough to really throw the expansion, the recovery off track.
Neil, a lot of attention being given to the manufacturing sector. What did those numbers tell us, not only about January, but over the last several years?
Look, we're seeing steady gains. Manufacturing employment keeps rising. It's 13 million jobs, and it's total, and it keeps kind of steadily upward. This is a sector that is growing, even as there are all the challenges that are well understood about American manufacturing.
And Danielle, one reason we've gotten a lot of attention on manufacturing is because the way that President Trump has sort of personally gotten involved in this. One of the big deals he talked about was Foxconn, the Taiwanese firm. Their plan to go into Wisconsin, build a big manufacturing plant. They promised 13,000 jobs. President Trump went to the groundbreaking. He said it wouldn't have happened without him. But we've also had a little turbulence in that plan this week. Quickly tell us what happened. What's the latest on that plan?
That's right. Well, Foxconn originally billed that plan as a blue-collar revival. They said they wanted to hire thousands of manufacturing workers, people to make touchscreens at a factory. Then earlier this week, we heard no. The company said they were actually going to pivot to more of an engineering and research focus, which would not promise blue-collar jobs. All of a sudden today, they flip-flopped again and said, hey, after talking to President Trump, we've decided to go back to that original blueprint. And everyone's trying to just make sense of that.
Danielle, what does this say about the way that the president has personalized these manufacturing job announcements? Not only Foxconn, but Carrier in Indiana, GM, and other operations.
That's right. It's a risky move, and President Trump seems to get involved with individual firms more than any president of the past. But that Carrier deal you mentioned, he showed up at that plant in Indianapolis and said, I have personally saved all of these jobs from outsourcing to Mexico. Then you had a union leader a couple days later tell us, actually, no, about half those jobs will be lost anyway. So as the facts emerge, it's hard to explain for President Trump sometimes why these deals did not go the way he said they would.
Neil, they talked in the Foxconn deal, the officials said that there were market realities when they first said that they were scaling back and not doing a huge manufacturing plant. Your colleagues at the Times did a story in the past several days about why Apple is not doing more manufacturing in the United States. What does this say about the challenges to the manufacturing sector, even though it's growing, as you say. The challenge is to really big expansion in U.S. manufacturing.
Look, in Asia, there are very complex supply networks that enable these advanced electronics to get made in China, in Taiwan, in Korea, and Japan. And rebuilding that and creating a situation where there's all of the necessary parts at just the right time in an American factory is very challenging to do. That's before you get to the labor cost issue, and that's very real. American workers are paid more than Chinese workers, so making the economics work can be very challenging. That said, the fact that they were planning to keep this as, or are planning to keep this as a research center is a sign of what kinds of jobs and what kinds of roles in the modern economy the United States is very good at, which is the kind of technological development and this more advanced kind of role.
Danielle, you cover labor. Why are manufacturing jobs so important to the labor unions?
Right, well, that's the best paying job you can get without a college degree. These are jobs that support families across the Midwest, and you saw those really hollow out in the last 20 years or so. But right now, even manufacturing is shifting toward needing more high-tech skills as we see a movement toward automation. So even those jobs are calling for more education.
Danielle Paquette of The Washington Post, Neil Irwin of The New York Times. Thanks to you both.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.